say what you drink disappears into your system. But the truth is, alcohol doesn't just pass through you. It finds its way into the very control center of your body, the brain. The moment it crosses the threshold of your bloodstream, it begins rewriting how your neurons communicate. It's not a harmless visitor. Alcohol is a neurotoxin, a chemical that poisons the very cells responsible for thought, memory, and coordination. And because of its small molecular size, there's almost nothing standing in its way. Once a sip is swallowed, alcohol moves through the throat into the stomach. About 1/5 is absorbed right there through the stomach lining, while the rest continues into the small intestine, where it slips easily into the bloodstream. The blood acts like a high-speed delivery system, carrying alcohol throughout the body, and eventually to the brain. Under normal conditions, the brain is guarded by the blood-brain barrier, a layer that shields it from dangerous substances. But alcohol is small and fat-soluble, so it crosses freely. That's why its effects can appear within minutes. Dizziness, warmth, ease, or confusion. All signs of chemical interference within your most delicate organ. Once inside, alcohol begins to manipulate the brain's chemistry. It targets a neurotransmitter called gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, which is responsible for slowing brain activity and producing calm. Alcohol exaggerates this natural braking system, creating that familiar sense of relaxation and lowered inhibition. But at the same time, it suppresses glutamate, the neurotransmitter that keeps you alert and focused. The result is a chemical imbalance. Too much calm, too little control. That's why coordination slips, speech blurs, and reaction time slows. It's not just feeling tipsy. It's the brain's communication network short-circuiting in real time. The effects don't stop there. Alcohol doesn't discriminate. It influences almost every region of the brain. The frontal lobe, your center for judgment, decision-making, and reasoning, begins to dim, making risky choices feel acceptable. Deep inside, the hippocampus, which encodes new memories, starts to malfunction, explaining why many can't recall parts of a night spent drinking. And at the back of the skull, the cerebellum, the structure responsible for balance and coordination, becomes disrupted, leading to unsteady movements and the classic staggered walk. Each region falters under alcohol's touch, yet the mind often remains unaware until the damage is visible. Short-term effects like slurred speech, blurred vision, and slowed reaction time are only the beginning. The more a person drinks, the greater the disruption. There's a direct, measurable relationship. Higher blood alcohol concentration equals higher neurological impairment. The brain's executive functions, assessing danger, calculating consequences, and controlling impulses, all fade. That's why someone under the influence might dive into the sea at night, speed on an empty road, or provoke a fight they'd normally avoid. Alcohol doesn't just lower coordination, it lowers awareness of risk itself. As judgment declines, empathy and perception are also dulled. Alcohol alters how the brain interprets social signals, facial expressions, tone of voice, emotional cues, leading to misunderstanding, aggression, or misplaced confidence. In this impaired state, accidents, injuries, and acts of violence rise dramatically. The chemistry of calmness turns quickly into the chemistry of chaos. But even brief intoxication can trigger long-term consequences. A single night of heavy drinking increases the risk of traumatic brain injury, falls, collisions, or impacts that damage neurons permanently. Over years, the harm multiplies. Repeated exposure to alcohol shrinks brain tissue, killing nerve cells and eroding the connections that allow thought and memory to flow. This isn't limited to chronic drinkers. Research shows that even moderate intake, as little as 7 to 14 units per week, can cause measurable loss of brain volume. Alcohol's damage accumulates silently. With time, that shrinkage translates into slower thinking, weaker memory, and higher risk of cognitive decline or dementia in older age. The more consumed, the greater the loss. The brain literally contracts, its intricate web of neurons fading away. And because these losses are structural, they don't easily repair themselves. Scientists have also linked alcohol use to vitamin deficiencies that worsen neurological damage. Long-term drinkers often lack thiamine, or vitamin B1, which the brain relies on to process energy. Without it, neurons begin to die, leading to a devastating disorder known as Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, a condition marked by confusion, severe memory loss, and coordination failure. It's one of the most extreme examples of how alcohol can turn nourishment into deprivation. Sleep, too, becomes corrupted. Alcohol may seem to help people drift off, but it disrupts REM sleep, the deep stage essential for memory and mood balance. Over time, the brain loses its rhythm, leaving the body fatigued and the mind unstable. Chronic sleep disruption feeds back into poor concentration, anxiety, and depression, creating a cycle that damages both mental and emotional health. It begins with a simple drink, but within that glass lies a chain reaction, a chemical sequence that travels through blood, crosses barriers, hijacks transmitters, and alters who you are. The most dangerous part? The brain doesn't warn you while it's breaking down. It simply adapts, one damaged cell at a time. The real danger begins when alcohol's short-term effects turn into long-term patterns. Each glass leaves behind microscopic evidence, damage so subtle that it escapes notice until the brain starts to change shape. Decades of research confirm what few want to believe. Alcohol doesn't just influence the brain, it rewires it. Repeated exposure slowly erodes gray matter, the region where most neural processing happens, and weakens white matter, the communication highways linking different parts of the brain. This isn't an abstract threat. Scans show measurable shrinkage even in moderate drinkers. The more a person drinks, the more brain cells die, and the more connections vanish. Over time, that means slower thinking, weaker memory, and difficulty concentrating. It's a cumulative erosion, small doses building into a lifetime of neurological wear. Scientists describe this as a dose-response relationship. The higher the intake, the greater the harm. There's no threshold where alcohol suddenly becomes toxic. It's toxic from the start. The only difference is how long it takes for the damage to show. And the consequences extend far beyond memory lapses. Chronic drinking can trigger deficiencies in vital nutrients, especially thiamine or vitamin B1. This deficiency can lead to a severe condition called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, a life-threatening disorder that devastates learning and memory. Victims often struggle to form new memories, repeating questions endlessly, trapped in loops of confusion. It's not psychological. It's neurological starvation. The brain literally loses its ability to store experiences. Alcohol also disrupts the very process that keeps the brain balanced: sleep. It suppresses rapid eye movement, the deep, restorative stage essential for emotional regulation and cognitive repair. Someone might fall asleep faster after drinking, but their rest is fragmented their brain deprived of the critical time it needs to consolidate memories and restore neural circuits. Over months and years, these restless nights compound, leading to irritability, depression, and poor concentration. The body rests, but the brain never recovers. To understand alcohol's full reach, it's important to see how it behaves across life stages. The brain's vulnerability isn't fixed. It changes from the womb to old age. During pregnancy, alcohol becomes a silent architect of harm. When consumed by an expectant mother, it crosses the placenta, entering the developing brain of the fetus. Because the fetus lacks the enzymes to break it down, the exposure lingers, altering how neurons grow and connect. The result can be fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, a lifelong condition that includes cognitive delays, learning disabilities, and behavioral challenges. The most severe version, fetal alcohol syndrome, physically alters brain development. MRI scans show reduced brain volume, especially in the temporal lobe, the area responsible for processing language, hearing, and memory. The child's nervous system forms under the influence of a toxin. What should have been growth becomes interruption. It's the single most preventable cause of intellectual disability worldwide. And yet, studies show millions of pregnancies are still exposed to alcohol every year. As a person grows, alcohol's effects evolve. During adolescence, a period when the brain is still wiring itself, alcohol acts like a sledgehammer against circuits that aren't yet complete. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for judgment, impulse control, and planning, is the last to mature. Drinking before this system fully develops disrupts its formation. Teenagers who drink heavily don't just take risks. Their brains are being trained to crave risk itself. That's why impulsive decisions, dangerous driving, or violent outbursts are so common in youth who drink. The neural brakes that keep behavior in check simply aren't finished building. Studies consistently show that adolescents who consume alcohol are far more likely to become dependent later in life. A landmark U.S. study tracking over 40,000 individuals found that nearly half of all people who develop alcohol dependence start before the age of 21. By 25, that number exceeds 60%. This connection isn't coincidence, it's biology. The developing brain learns quickly, and if it learns to rely on alcohol for relaxation, that imprint can last for decades. It's easy to dismiss teenage drinking as harmless experimentation, but the evidence paints a different picture. Heavy drinking in youth has been identified as one of the strongest predictors of early-onset dementia. A major Swedish study found that teenage binge drinking was the single greatest risk factor for developing dementia decades later. The pattern is simple. The earlier drinking begins, the higher the lifetime cost. Even for those who outgrow their teenage habits, the structural scars remain. Brain imaging of adults who began drinking early shows weaker connections between regions responsible for self-control and decision-making. The same weakened links that once drove impulsive choices continue to shape behavior in adulthood, making it harder to stop drinking even when the consequences are obvious. It's a self-reinforcing loop. The brain trained by alcohol continues to seek alcohol. Every stage of life reveals a different face of the same toxin. In the womb, it reshapes development. In youth, it sabotages growth. And in adulthood, it corrodes the very circuits that define identity, focus, and willpower. The body may grow older, but the chemistry of addiction remains young, impulsive, hungry, restless. The only question left is how long the brain can keep adapting before the system starts to fail. By adulthood, alcohol's impact takes on a more complex form. It doesn't just cloud judgment. It reshapes the brain structure and alters how thought, emotion, and coordination work together. Over time, neurons die faster than the brain can replace them, and the spaces between nerve cells widen. Imaging studies show that even low to moderate drinkers can experience this shrinkage. It's not always visible, but it's measurable. The difference between a healthy brain and one slowly losing volume year after year. Alcohol-related brain damage doesn't strike all at once. It accumulates quietly. What starts as forgetfulness or fatigue can progress into disorientation, difficulty learning, and emotional instability. For many, this damage goes unnoticed until daily life begins to change. When focusing feels harder, reactions slower, and moods less stable. Researchers have shown that brain shrinkage can occur even at consumption levels once considered safe. In fact, drinking as little as 7 to 14 units per week, the equivalent of a few glasses of wine, can cause measurable harm to gray and white matter. This risk becomes far more severe with heavy, long-term drinking. Years of exposure don't just erode memory and balance. They increase the likelihood of developing neurological diseases. Chronic alcohol use raises the risk of dementia, particularly alcoholic dementia and vascular dementia. The mechanism is multifaceted. Alcohol kills brain cells, inflames neural tissue, and raises blood pressure, which in turn damages blood vessels in the brain. Over time, these changes can lead to cognitive decline and stroke. Older adults are especially vulnerable. As the body ages, its ability to break down alcohol weakens. The same amount that once caused mild intoxication can now produce dangerous effects. Aging also brings other health issues, medication interactions, frailty, and slower reflexes, all of which make the brain more susceptible to alcohol-related harm. The result is a dangerous combination: weaker metabolism, more vulnerability, and higher risk. Falls are among the most serious outcomes in older drinkers. Alcohol impairs balance, sharpens vision problems, and slows reaction time. A deadly trio for someone with already limited mobility. Even small amounts increase the chance of falling. Studies show that each 10 grams of alcohol, roughly 1 unit, raises fall risk by 15%. The reason is simple. Alcohol interferes with the cerebellum, the brain's control center for balance and coordination. When its signals falter, even a single misstep can cause catastrophic injury. Another area of concern is stroke. Alcohol raises blood pressure and thickens the blood, making clots more likely to form. A sudden blockage or rupture in a brain artery can lead to paralysis, speech loss, or permanent disability. Stroke is already the leading cause of neurological disability across Europe, and alcohol magnifies that risk at every level of intake. The cumulative effect: weakened vessels, elevated pressure, and reduced brain volume, leaves older individuals especially defenseless. The link between alcohol and dementia is equally concerning. Global data suggests that as the population ages, dementia cases may triple within the next 30 years. Alcohol-related brain injury is a major contributor to that trend. Unlike genetic forms of dementia, this type is preventable, but only through awareness and action. When drinking stops, some neural recovery is possible. Gray matter can partially regenerate, and brain connectivity can improve, but the window is limited. Severe damage, like that caused by fetal exposure or traumatic brain injury, is often permanent. Modern imaging studies reveal striking evidence. Brain scans of adults consuming more than 14 units per week consistently show reduced gray and white matter compared to non-drinkers. This difference correlates directly with memory decline and slower cognitive performance. Even moderate drinking, once believed harmless, is now known to accelerate brain aging. The structure of the brain tells the story long before symptoms appear. One of the most promising areas of research focuses on prevention and reversal. Scientists emphasize the importance of thiamine, vitamin B1, because deficiency plays a central role in alcohol-related brain injury. Replenishing this vitamin can prevent or lessen damage, especially when combined with reduced alcohol intake. For some, that means supplements. For others, it means complete abstinence. In either case, the principle remains. Less alcohol equals less harm. The brain, though delicate, has remarkable resilience when given the chance to heal. But healing isn't just an individual matter. Experts agree that personal awareness alone cannot solve the global scale of alcohol-related brain damage. Societal change is needed. Studies highlight that lasting improvements happen only when alcohol consumption drops across entire populations. That means shifting culture, making alcohol less accessible, less affordable, and less normalized. When availability decreases, so does harm. The science is consistent. Prevention works best before damage begins. The message is simple but urgent. Alcohol doesn't only cloud a night, it clouds a lifetime. Every sip crosses the same barrier, every drop leaves its mark, and every reduction matters. The brain may recover, but only if we let it. In the end, the most powerful protection isn't found in a medicine or a treatment. It's in the decision to give the brain what it truly needs: time, clarity, and rest from the substance that silently rewrites its design.